fairly easy introduction to do, as most of us in this room know our speaker very well, Bruce Shelton. I started attending this church, near as I can remember, somewhere around 2000, and would come to church, and Bruce was our pastor. We made our real first connection at a funeral home, where Bruce was serving as minister of a service, and I was serving as the funeral director. Since then, our friendship has grown. I was in the office one Sunday writing some checks, and Bruce came in and asked me if I would like to become a minister of our church, and I joined the ordination program. If this church, and as we all know, this church has a big heart, and if you could put your finger on the pulse of this church, a lot of that loving energy that we feel every day comes from Bruce Shelton. Bruce contributes so much to this church. As our senior pastor, he's currently serving as our president of the board again. He heads our grounds and building committee. He's on our music committee and shares music every Sunday with us. Bruce is an amazing individual. And Bruce, I'd like to welcome you up here. We all are very anxious to hear you speak today. And as you walk up here, if you can see his aura, it's aura of pure love and joy and happiness. Welcome, Bruce. Come forward.
Thank you so much, Larry. I always like to begin my service with just a few moments of silence in which I would ask that we all pray together that God will just talk through me today to say to you the words that will best that you need right now to hear. So if we could all just tune in together to the Holy Spirit, feel God's presence. So thank you, Father. Amen. All right. Well, it's my pleasure to talk to you this morning. The name of the day's talk is Hello, It's Time to Wake Up. And today's talk is about the awakening experience. There's no topic I could have chosen today that would be more important than this topic, because this is really what our life is all about. We have been doing this thing that we call living a life many, many times, many lifetimes over and over. It's all been about coming home to God and fully awakening to who we are, becoming aware of our the essence within us. That's what awakening is all about. And we are just about there. Many sources are telling us that as a human race, we are on the verge of a mass awakening. We've been hearing this message over and over again from many different sources. And so today, I'd like for us just to spend a few minutes taking a look at what are we really talking about? What is awakening? What awakening to what? You know? I'd like for us to spend a few minutes taking a look at it and what we can do to best continue to facilitate this process of awakening. I'd like to begin my talk with a few words about flowers. And I'm going to borrow this beautiful sunflower to help me with this. This flower will represent all the flowers of the world. We're told that approximately 114 million years ago, the very first flower blossomed on planet Earth. This flower probably didn't last very long. Conditions weren't favorable for it to continue to be reproduced. And it may have been many, many years before another flower blossomed somewhere in the world. But one day, shortly after the rising of the sun, the fields were ablaze with flowers. One day, thousands of flowers seemed to blossom all over in different parts of the world. And in the days and months and years that followed, the numbers increased exponentially, so that there were now, as today, millions and millions of flowers are blossoming all over the world. Flowers are very interesting because flowers are like messengers from another realm. They're like a bridge, you see, from the world of spirit to the world of form. They not only have this scent that is very beautiful and this beauty that's so wonderful, but they have this just this magnificence that it's like a gift from heaven to the world of earth, from the world of the formless to the world of form. Now, if we were to take a look at the word enlightenment, right, and broaden our normal definition of that term, enlightenment, we could actually use that word to say that flowers were the enlightenment of the plant kingdom. See, the plant kingdom had been evolving for millions of years. There had been green plants on this world for millions of years before the first flower. And then one day, the evolution of plants reached a point at which there was just basically a mass awakening of plants in the form of flowers. So, put this back. So if you can follow me so far with what I've been saying, we as humans are basically going through the same process. Okay? We are going through an evolutionary process in which we are on the verge of a major transformation of consciousness. The question is, are we ready? Are we ready to break free from the gravitational pull of thoughts and feelings and beliefs that we have within our own mind that are rooted in fear? This is the whole problem. You see, it's our own mind holding us back. We have these beliefs in our mind that basically cause us to be trapped in our minds. Awakening is all about breaking free. You see, breaking free from what some people describe it as the prison shell. Breaking free to what? Breaking free to a full awareness of who we are, finding ourselves at last, becoming aware, expressing our spiritual essence. Okay? That's what awakening is all about. Now, the possibility of such a transformation of consciousness has been at the core of all the world religions, the enduring world religions since the very beginning. Okay? This has been a core teaching that this is possible. And to help explain this a little bit more, let me put it over here a little bit. Let me go over this way. Here we go. See these faces over here. This is the way the teachings of the world. Each religion has had its own name for the individual who has awakened. Okay. In Buddhism, we have Bodhi, which means enlightenment. Okay, that's the word used in Buddhism. In Hinduism, we have the word moksha, which means freedom, or sahaja mahati, permanent or ongoing oneness. Probably best to keep this off because I think everybody can hear me, right?
Sure.
Okay. We have the Sufis, which is Sufism, as you know, is the mystical branch of Islam. They use the word Baka, which means abiding in God. In Taoism, they use the word Ming, which means oneness with the Tao. Judaism, the mystical branch of Judaism is the Kabbalah. They use the word Devakut, which means cleaving to the divine. In Christianity, the Catholic Church has used the word deification, or union with God. Okay? Now these teachings didn't just happen yesterday. These have been teachings of these major world religions for thousands of years, right? There have been people aware of what awakening is all about going back thousands of years with these different spiritual traditions. In this church, we particularly like the word Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is another way of describing the awakening experience. An example of this, where there was this 17th century French mystic named Maria de l'Incarnation, and she wrote this way back in the 17th century. She said, "My soul has dwelt in her center, which is God. One can read, write, work, do what one will, and nevertheless this fundamental occupation always abides, and the soul never ceases to be united with God. Sounds like she awakened to me, you know. Now, these wonderful spiritual teachers that you might call the big guys, the Buddha and Jesus, they and many others, many of whom are not known, these were humanity's early flowers. Okay, they were precursors, rare and precious beings. A widespread flowering was not possible during their lifetime. The human race just we weren't evolved enough to really get it fully. We still haven't gotten it fully today. All we have to do is turn on the news as proof of that, right? But they left behind extremely important teachings that had the effect of facilitating this awakening process. However, many of their teachings were very misunderstood, and they were even greatly distorted. I could give 1,000 examples, but you know about them. So we are now told by many sources, many different avenues, that we are on the verge of a mass awakening. This awakening was announced by in addition to spiritual teachers, it was announced by the minstrels of the so-called New Age back in the 60s. Do you all remember a group called the Fifth Dimension? They wrote that great song. A bunch of baby boomers here, you know, we loved to sing it, you know, hear them sing it. And the words are just so perfect to basically announce what's happening, okay? Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding, no more falsehoods or derisions, golden living dreams of visions, mystic crystal revelations, and the mind's true liberation. Aquarius, Aquarius. We're having announcements everywhere. Yes? Okay, I'll read it again. Yeah, let's sing it. Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abiding. No more falsehoods or derisions, golden living dreams or visions, mystic crystal revelations, and the mind's true liberation. Aquarius, Aquarius. That's enough. Well, I can see I'm singing to the choir here. Now we had the Beatles. They were perhaps the greatest minstrels of all, and they had one of their great songs was "All We Need Is Love, Love, Love." What could be a better way to announce what this transformation of consciousness is all about? And they help facilitate the process through their music. So the question is, where now in the year 2017 are we? Okay. I don't know about you, but I just don't seem to see a lot of awakened people running around. I mean, this is all nice to talk about, but let's get real here. Who in this room is awakened? Raise your hand, please. Okay. God, look at this.
It's a handful, Bruce.
Yeah. Well,
Like the flower.
I used to believe that until I discovered this book a couple of months ago, that there are not many awakened people. You just proved that this book is all about. This is a book called The Leap by a guy named Steve Taylor. I read this book because it was recommended to me by Eckhart Tolle, and I figured if Eckhart's recommending him, he must be worth reading. Well, I was not disappointed. The Leap is an amazing book. Steve Taylor is this English transpersonal psychologist. That, for those of you who know Neil Helm, that's what he's working on now. He's going to be getting awarded his PhD in transpersonal psychology very in the next few months. Just about there. But Steve Taylor is a transpersonal psychologist. He's well known in England. Has a job as a professor of psychology at Leeds Beckett University. So he's written a number of books, and he wrote his master's thesis and his doctoral dissertation on the study of awakened people. And he in the preface of his book, he says that when he first began his studies on this, his research on this, he says he didn't really think there were very many awakened people out there. He hasn't been to this church apparently, and but I didn't even know it myself. I'm glad to hear it. He said he figured, the only people that were awakened were people who had been to monasteries and spent their life in a monastery praying and meditating every day, or people that perhaps lived in a cave in the Himalayas, and then maybe if they were extremely fortunate, they might awaken at some point in their life, right? That's where he started off with that premise, and he says in the book, I was wrong. He discovered that as he began his research that many individuals have actually experienced this awakening process, especially when what he was doing started to reach the news media. And he identified a number of individuals who awakened, okay, as beings. And he, as a psychologist, he says, I'm really not a spiritual teacher, I'm a psychologist. He looks at this from a perspective of a psychologist, and part of his work was to actually write a psychological criteria of this is what are we talking about when we say we're awakened. And so he writes this out, and it's all explained in detail in the book The Leap, which if you're interested in what we're talking about today, you might want to take a look at that book. He's a fascinating guy. The simplest thing is to go, if you really want to know about him, is just go on YouTube and put Steve Taylor, and he's got a bunch of great talks. And he's just he makes me feel good when I think about him. He wrote this book. Now if we look at all the world religions, if you ask yourself what are they talking about, what does awakening mean? Well, basically it boils down to 5 core characteristics. That if you look at all the religions, what they're teaching, when they're talking about an awakened person, there's 5 core characteristics of the awakened individual. These are the 5 primary characteristics, core characteristics of the wakeful state as taught in the various religions. The first characteristic is a state of consciousness of union, a sense of union, of oneness, right, with all that is. It's a sense of the boundaries basically fall. We don't view ourselves as 30 different individuals here. Of course, we maintain our individuality, but we actually feel a part of each other, you see? And we feel that way when we're in a group like this. But you actually feel the oneness of other people. You feel the oneness not only of humans, but of the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom. We realize our oneness with trees and with these beautiful flowers behind me. We realize our oneness with Mother Earth, with the universe. This is one of the core. When we awaken, okay, when that happens, and those of you who are already there, you're already aware of this. See, I've sensed this to a point already. I sense my oneness, but I haven't quite crossed the threshold at which I feel like I'm fully awakened. All right, I'm getting there. I expect to do it this lifetime, and I'm giving this talk to facilitate the process. That's right. Give me an applause. Cheer me on. Okay. Hey. All right. We're all cheering everybody in this room as you applaud us in, not just me. I don't want to be alone. So we have this sense of union. The second, and most importantly, I mentioned the world, other human beings. Most importantly, we get this sense of connectiveness, of oneness with the source of our being. Okay? We get that aliveness, that awareness of our connectedness with what we can call God, Brahman, the Tao, whatever words you prefer. It's actually, this being is beyond words. But when we have that connection, when we realize that we truly are the sons and daughters of God, this is what Jesus, for example, taught over and over again, that we're all the children of God. Well, this is what it's about, you see, is awakening to this sense of union, of our oneness with the source of our being. The second core characteristic is a sense of inner stillness. Okay, in other words, peace of mind, inner tranquility. Boy, wouldn't that be nice, you know? Because the dilemma that we all have is we've got this mind with all these thoughts, this endless stream of thoughts that just never seem to end, right? Psychologists tell us that we have I hear, you look at different research on this. One will say we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Another will say we have 50,000 thoughts a day. But whatever it is, we have just like an endless stream of thoughts. I was reading the other day, one psychologist was saying that unfortunately 90% of these thoughts, you see, are actually negative thoughts. They're fear-based thoughts. They're thoughts about regrets, resentments, thoughts about things we've done in the past that we feel ashamed about, that we blame ourselves for, or the worries about the future. And the same psychologist is saying 95% of the thoughts we have today, of this 50,000 thoughts, 95% of the same thoughts we had yesterday. How they figure all this out, I don't know. But I think the general idea is actually true, that we have this endless stream of thoughts. It's like this, you can call it chatter in the mind, right? This voice in the head that's very disturbing. Well, when we awaken, and Steve Taylor gives all these examples of people that he's met who have awakened, this voice either stops altogether, or at least the chatter goes way down to the point that we're aware of the thoughts, but they don't bother us anymore, okay? And it depends on whether we've had an intense awakening, as would be the case, for example, with Jesus and the Buddha, or less intense. There's different levels of awakening. And so there was this 14th century German theologian named Meister Eckhart. Wonderful guy, right? Christian monk. And he, theologian, he describes, this is the 14th century, he describes this storm of inward thought, the quote unquote, the way he described the way our minds work. He's trying to find God within himself, and he's finding this storm of inward thought. Meister Eckhart says, if God is to speak his word in the soul, she, meaning the soul, must be at rest and at peace. Okay? In the Upanishads, we see these words, when the mind is silent, it can enter into a world which is far beyond the mind, the highest end. Okay? This happens when we awaken. Finally, things quieten down, and we have this sense of peace, and it's a permanent change. The third characteristic of awakening is a sense of self-sufficiency. Okay? We have everything. You see, we're awakened, we have everything. There's nothing we can do, right, that will add to what we already have. And we have this sense of love and joy and peace that's within our hearts. There's a Buddhist Heart Sutra which reads, and their lack of desire for self-justification, enlightened men and women can never be humiliated or upset at others. In other words, I don't need other people's approval. You see, all of us, we want other people to like us. We want it, and if somebody doesn't like me, Bruce Shelton doesn't like that. You know, it makes me upset. I might get mad about it. I might get depressed about it. I want everybody to validate me and say, "You're great," right? Well,
You're great.
yeah, thank you. I didn't need that, but thank you. But when we're awakened, you see, we don't really need any validation. And if that means when things go wrong, we don't. If somebody criticizes us, it has no real effect. The Bhagavad Gita says, the same in pleasure and pain, to whom gold or stones or earth are one, and what is pleasing or displeasing leaves him in peace. This is the Bhagavad Gita, thousands of years old, is teaching us this. Fourth main core characteristic is compassion. Strong capacity for empathy. In other words, our heart is awakened. We have a person who's awakened has this strong love, unconditional love for everyone and everything. And part of what goes along with that, of course, is a need to be of service to others, to help others, to make the world a better place. So the Buddhist monk named Shantideva wrote, I wish to remove the suffering of every living being, enabling all to move towards enlightenment. My concern for the welfare of others gains me greater merit than any act of worship. And Jesus, he says, the greatest of all the commandments is to love the Lord thy God with all thy body, mind, and soul. And the second is likened to it, that you love your neighbor as yourself. Fifth core characteristic of the awakened state, a surrender to the flow of the universe, of God through us. Okay? This is all about when we awaken, we're one with God. So the Spirit of God fills us. There's nothing in us, as a matter of fact, but God. Okay? But the essence of, which is the essence of who we are. Okay? The essence of who we are is the living presence of God within us that then connects with all else that exists. So when we awaken, the Spirit of God is working through us. So everything that we do, you see, is basically a blessing to the world. The great example of this is Jesus. What did Jesus do? He spent his life serving others, making the world a better place. The Bible says that this man went about doing good in the world. Who could ask for anyone to say anything better than that about anyone? This is Jesus. And so there are three main ways, according to Steve Taylor, that that people experience the awakening process. One is, he says, some people, and he studied people historically as well as people today, some people, it seems like they're born this way. They're born with these states of these four core characteristics. When they're growing up, they may not know it, that they're a little different than everybody else, you know. But they have this they're born this way. And he uses an example as Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman, he wrote one of his great writings is called Song of Myself. This is like, 150 years ago during the Civil War period. He wrote, "Divine am I inside and out. I make holy whatever I touch. I see something of God each hour of 24, and each moment them. In the faces of the men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass." This is Walt Whitman. It sounded like to me he made it. He was an enlightened being. Steve Taylor says many people, when they awaken, they're highly attracted to poetry or to music because they find they can express themselves, through these arts better than any other way. The third way people awaken is they have, this is the most common way, they have the experience of, they go through a traumatic experience, a time of psychological turmoil, okay? It's like it took this turmoil to crack the egg. It's like we go through, in other words, it could be a divorce, it could be a death of someone we dearly love, it could be a serious physical illness that we have. We all know about suffering, right? And it comes to us in different ways. This can turn out to be a great blessing. It might be just what we need, you see, to break free. Now, my favorite example of this is Eckhart Tolle. He's become a major teacher to many people, including myself. Eckhart Tolle went through this awakening experience, and in the preface of his book, his first book, The Power of Now, he explains what happened to him. He said he was brought up, he was born in Germany to German parents. He had a very traumatic childhood. His dad, because his dad had an explosive temper, and he says he and his mother were constantly walking around on eggshells. They were afraid they were going to do something to trigger his dad's temper. He was brought up with this. And then in his 20s, he trying to find himself, and he found himself highly attracted to the work of academia. And he says, I guess this is what I want to do is I want to become a scholar. And so he got his college degree in England, and then he was working on his doctorate work, and he was a graduate research assistant. And one day, he saw his model of what he wanted to do with his life was to become an academic, to become a scholar. Okay, that's my path. One day, he tells a story that he and the other students went to class, and they had this professor that to him was his role model. This guy was the perfect person. This is who I want to be like. Well, he goes to class, and someone comes and says, "We're sorry to tell you this, but Professor so he took his life last night." Well, that blew Eckhart Tolle away, because this is what I want to be like. This man, I thought he had it together. He must have not had it together. So Eckhart Tolle says he was highly depressed during his 20s, suicidal at times. He says one night, it was he said he felt darker than ever before. He was thinking about suicide. He woke up in the middle of the night in bed, and he was just so depressed. And he had the thought, I can't stand to live with myself any longer. Then he said, that would sound curious to me. I can't stand to live with myself any longer. Who is I and who is myself? You know? And he says, then he felt himself being pulled into this powerful vortex of energy that was like a black hole. He says he became very frightened, okay? And he says he heard the words, resist nothing. And then he can't remember what happened until the next morning. And the way he described his awakening the next morning is so beautiful. I can't paraphrase it. I have to read it to you. It's not long. It says, I was awakened by the chirping of a bird outside the window. I had never heard such a sound before. My eyes were still closed, and I saw the image of a precious diamond. Yes, if a diamond could make a sound, this is what it would be like. I opened my eyes. The first light of dawn was filtering through the curtains. Without any thought, I felt, I knew that there is infinitely more to light, feeling that, than what we realize. That soft luminosity filtering through the curtains was love itself. Tears came into my eyes. I got up and walked around the room. I recognized the room, and yet I knew that I had never truly seen it before. Everything was fresh and pristine as if it had just come into existence. I picked up things, a pencil, an empty bottle, marveling at the beauty and aliveness of it all. That day I walked around the city in utter amazement at the miracle of life on earth, as if I had just been born into the world. Sounds like to me he awakened. And he said, now this is an interesting thing about him, he had no spiritual background whatsoever. He says, I didn't know what had happened to me. He says, I didn't know if this feeling was going to continue, this feeling of ecstasy, of pure peace, love, joy, everything we were just talking about. He says, I heard him at a seminar one time. He says, I wrote down notes to try to, so that I could read these notes someday when this all left me as to how wonderful this was. He says it never left him. He says the peace he was completely, it was a permanent awakening. And so he says what he did to try to figure out what had happened was he went to some Buddhist monasteries. And that's where he had his first training on spirituality. And he learned, oh, this is what's happened to me. And at the monastery, the other monks, after they got to know him, they said, he's got what we're all looking for, you know, and which is really interesting. And he says for a couple of years there, all he didn't want to do anything. He was so much into a state of being, you see, into a state of consciousness, into the state of pure bliss, that there's nothing he said he could do that would add to that. So he just felt like doing nothing. So what is he? He goes and spends his days sitting on a bench in a park watching the ducks. And he's in a state of ecstasy. That he says, I didn't have a job, I didn't work. I would just make enough, I'd work a job for a week or two and make just enough money to pay for food. He says, I had no home. He says, I was in ecstasy. Now, if this were to happen in India, people would understand what's going on. He says, when this happens to people here, something like this happens, they think you've lost your mind. He says his mother said, you've lost your mind. And he says she was right. He had lost his mind. Well, I have to end here because I've done my 30 minutes. But just to close it, he went on, of course, to write The Power of Now. 20 years he spent preparing this, wrote The Power of Now. That book has gone on and has been translated into 33 languages. It's sold millions and millions of copies, and the New Earth was his other great message. But in closing, that's why we're here, is to awaken. And it's going to happen. If it has not already happened, if it hasn't already happened, it's going to happen. And it'll be an experience that you'll know it when it's happened. And it'll be the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to us. So I'd like to just close by saying, good morning. It's time to wake up. Thank you.